But this is about low frequency noise, and in Finland they made some studies. The recent study from 2020, made by the government solely, no consultants involved. They concluded that the reason for annoyance and everything else is not coming from infrasound, but other issues. So, but the first paper is about infrasound long distance propagation by Steven Crozier from Norway. Please.
Thank you for your introduction. Good to see so many people on sunny Copenhagen this morning. Thank you for coming. My wife and I, we moved to Freya 20 times 2 years ago, 40 years, 1985. And a lot has happened on the island since then. From being very poor, they became ultra rich. And if you've seen the Netflix commentary or series, Billionaire Island, that's on it. Our nanny's in it. I have a cameo role also. Anyway, enough about that. I was chief medical officer on the island, and the handling of sound pollution was to be transferred from the county governors to us. And so when there was a planned wind turbine to be set up, that was to be my responsibility, sound pollution. And arguments that infrasound could give you health issues, I thought that was absurd. I mean, come on, you can't hear low frequency noise. If you're against wind turbines, you better come up with some better arguments. Anyhow, I sort of started reading literature, and there's a lot of information on both sides. And as you mentioned, in Finland, the study came in 2020 that proves that there's no effect. It's all in their head. I went to the step of buying equipment from New Zealand, quite advanced. I mean, it's like it's PC, but there's two very good microphones, and they have a range from 0.1 hertz to 20,000 with a plus minus 0.5 decibel linearity or specificity. And I've used Signal 7 software to analyze the sound files. Their location and time and date stamped, so they're not they're tamper-proof, so they could be used in court proceedings. So if anyone wants to see the files, I'm pleased to share them with you. Anyhow, in December 2019, I was contacted by concerned citizens on our neighbor island, Hitra, which you can see on this map here. And in this house, I made recordings. Oh, sorry, that's the wind turbine farm. The point is that this person where I made the recordings had lived for 9 years with smaller Siemens 2.3 turbines with no problem, 10 kilometers away. But when the Vestas 117, also about 26, were erected in the same site with twice the sweep area, problems arose. These two sites, they have together 150 V117 turbines. They're located quite far away. But on the day of the recording in December 2019, there was a temperature inversion and the wind came from the east-northeast. The predominant direction is from the southwest. So the wind was from this direction. We measured high peak to trough levels in the blade pass harmonics in the house located. I'll show you shortly. There are two cases I'm going to present. There are two cases, they're single cases, they don't prove anything. The common thread, they have consider themselves to be highly sensitive persons, and about 1 in 5 in the population is considered highly sensitive. So this is the recording in the house 10 kilometers away. This is outdoors and this is indoors. And you see the difference here from the peak to trough values outdoors as compared to indoors. 29 decibels peak to trough in the bedroom versus 14 outdoors. And for comparison, 4 hours later, the house in Hita, 20 kilometers away, you have pretty much a similar picture, except that there's an attenuation of 5 decibels outdoors. It was 116 with the sound pressure level on the neighbor island, and 5 decibel attenuation in the bedrooms, 15 centimeters above the pillows. I'd like to mention that all compressors in the house were turned off, and the microphones were pointed in the direction of Hitra, not towards the northeast, but more turbines. They both come into commission this a couple of months before. So the question is, how much of this sound energy that we recorded comes from 10 and 20 kilometers to the south, and how much is influenced coming from the northeast? We don't know. So the second case, this was recorded in February 2021. This is a person who had, in the late 50s, developed atrial fibrillation. And after 5 electroconversions, the person got an ablation. They go in and surgically remove the site that's giving the Uranus signals. The fibrillation can recur again in the house, and when the person leaves the house and goes south to visit family, it goes away after a day. Is there any connection there? Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, it's notable these health issues started after the erection of the Hitra 2 site with larger turbines. The Chisvite study was commissioned by the municipality in 2023. The alarming rates of migraine were double of the national average and a reference community. The numbers are in the presentation. I'm not going to read them off. But anyway, sleep disturbances were 89% versus 63 and 51% in the other population. The weakness is that there was a low participation. There were only 53% of the persons living within 2 kilometers who participated. So that could give you a bias. The ones who didn't respond, they might not have had any health issues, so there was no reason to participate. So that's a weakness in that survey. This is the second survey in Norway. There was one before in 2015. A colleague presented this in Buenos Aires, but that was some other conference, I believe. There was a high annoyance ratio there also. So now we're coming to the Finnish study you mentioned, commissioned by the government, that infrasound doesn't explain symptoms. And it's a study, and you can design a study to get the results that you want. There were 20 participants, and they listened for 10 minutes in a laboratory. These were people who were annoyed, and when they couldn't discern that it was infrasound that was being played off in the lab, or they didn't have a rise in blood pressure, or heart rate, or galvanic skin response, like a lie detector, that sort of proves that there's no health issues with it. That's sort of like saying smoking a couple of cigarettes tobacco doesn't give you cancer. 10 minutes. In a meeting with the National Institute of Public Health in Norway in January 2020, we appealed for health surveys of the monitoring of persons living near wind turbine farms. We were brushed off citing lack of funds. It's funny, because Norway is quite wealthy. Likewise, an appeal for legislation to make the industry prove that the safety of the products, which are ever larger wind turbines that produce higher levels of infrasound, were dismissed. The NIPH states on their website of May 2022, that hasn't been updated since then, Although either infrasound nor low-frequency sound are specific to wind turbines, there's been particular concerns about the health consequences of infrasound from wind turbines. Okay. My point is that infrasound from wind turbines is specific, with signatures comprised of blade pass harmonics with high peak to trough levels, as opposed to randomly generated broadband infrasound from traffic in nature. This generates more hysteresis in cells and organs than a constant high level of infrasound with lower peak to trough levels, and thereby may have a greater disruptive effect at a cellular level. The concept hysteresis, the only question we can come back to that. It's not hysteria, but hysteresis. This is a physical phenomenon that also applies in biological material, living cells. Anyway, the Public Health Committee in Norge has had meetings with the Norwegian Water Resource Management, the Energy Directorate, the Environment Agency, the Norwegian Directorate of Health, to discuss guidelines for evaluating the sum effects of audible and uneven amplitude modulated noise, infrasound, high intensity flashes of light at night, shadows cast by on the side of moving turbine blades. This activates the HPA axis. Bisphenol A, PFAS, spread in nature and drinking water, grief of nature loss, and property value loss. There's a whole plethora of issues. I'm just talking about infrasound here. All these agencies gave us kudos for the efforts and agree that these are issues that need to be addressed. Yet they admit that they don't have the means nor the competence to make any evaluations or recommendations. This is also known as passing the buck. It's nice, but someone else can deal with it. The Norwegian Institute of Public Health has not since responded for a new meeting since January 2020. That's 5 years ago. As it seems that highly sensitive persons are the first to report on health issues living near a wind turbine farm, we're up to 20% of the population stricken by a suspected agent. One would certainly try to elucidate the matter, or not. Recent knowledge of how infrasound affects cell physiology is presented in the 2023 study, Impairment of the Endothelium and Disorder of Microcirculation in Humans and Animals Exposed to Infrasound Due to Irregular Mechanotransduction. This is an article from Berlin. Biological systems, particularly cells and tissues, converts physical cues like tensile, compressive, and shear stresses, as well as stiffness, into biochemical signals through a process called mechanotransduction. This process is fundamental to how living organisms sense and respond to mechanical disturbances, including sound. This framework may be a plausible pathophysiological explanation for symptoms observed, and it surely suggests that further research and precautionary measures are warranted regarding technologies emitting constant, low-frequency pulsive noise with large peak to trough harmonics. The study from 2021, Infrasound Exposure Promotes Development of Atrial Fibrosis in Rats, discusses this issue. The animal study demonstrates that infrasound can physically scar the heart, creating exact tissue damage that is known to lead to atrial fibrillation. Proprietors of wind turbine farms do not have to conduct any post-erection sound measurements nor record any infrasound inside nearby houses. A way to guard the public health is to invoke the precautionary principle, which is integrated in the Public Health Act through international obligations and EU law, and is explicitly expressed in various legislation. Our plea is also to mandate to map infrasound measurements in homes near wind turbine farms and set limits on infrasound in residences, as the Danish Environmental Agency, DEPA, intended back in 2011 and backed away from after pressure from Ditlev Engel, who's then the CEO of Vestas. He's now at Vestas of DNV in Norway. We also have a plea to impose a moratorium on erecting any new WTFs closer than 10 kilometers to residential areas. Now, this is probably impossible in Europe, but Norway has vast amounts of nature, and we can do it. But again, this is political decision. Right, okay, I'm rounding up. Thank you for listening. And to quote old King Solomon, "But justice for troubled wind farm neighbors won't happen until those who aren't affected become as outraged as those who are." Love to discuss with you now and after. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? So we have mics there, and I give this one from the center.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation.
Could you stand up and say your name, please?
Cal Case from On Path Energy. Thanks for the presentation. Just two questions. Can you go back to the graph where it shows it had frequency and time, like the colourful cracks?
This one?
Yeah.
This is that was the house we're comparing to. This is the house where I measured 10 kilometers away.
And do you know if the wind turbines were spinning? Like, was the wind blowing with the turbines operational?
They were operational, yes.
Do you have like RPM data from the turbines?
I don't because I mean, what would be the ground truth? There are two sets of turbines running. I believe all 24 plus 26 were in motion. The Siemens Gamesa, they're much smaller, and the Vestas are twice the sweep area. I can't remember the blade lengths, but anyway, they were both operating.
And then you mentioned one of the studies on rats. I seem to remember reading a few of those several years ago, and the levels were way higher.
Way higher. That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
They were exposed for what was it? 6 weeks, I believe.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Wouldn't be operating.
I know. Okay, but are we rats? We're living in an environment also 24/7.
Thanks.
Mm.
Yeah.
And Harry from Rice. I guess probably the speed of the turbines was around 0.16 or something like this, so blade passing frequency is probably around 0.6 hertz, I don't know exactly.
I calculated it was about 1 hertz for the smaller turbines and 0.6 for the larger ones.
Okay,
Yeah.
but the peaks are far higher. What's the connection between those peaks and the wind turbine?
I don't know. What I see is that there is a larger peak to trough level inside the house than outside the house. I'm not a
But it
physicist.
could be several reasons. I mean, it's the ocean around, the waves, everything else could be ended 10 kilometers away.
I've never seen this before. So the waves, and we have orkan blowing quite often. I make recordings, and I don't see this picture. This is particular. I mean, this is why I'm sort of asking the question: has this something to do with propagation from the northeast, with the inversion and the wind coming from that direction?
And do you try to measure closer to the wind farm to see what is the real signature?
I've done it, and it's not quite. I mean, this is extreme what I'm showing you here. This isn't every day. Yeah, but my point is that there's something going on inside the houses, and this is not the industry is not obliged to measure it, or nor is the authorities, both in Norway and Sweden. We're collaborating, by the way, with Norway and Sweden on this to start measuring. I mean, these are people that are complaining about issues, and we got to take it seriously. And sort of start. I mean, this is what science is: to sort of show me, don't tell me.
Okay, but my guess is science is that you find causalities that are proven, and this is.
That's my point.
Here.
I'm not trying to prove anything here. What I'm saying is the precautionary principle. As a physician, that's my obligation to patients. So let the science prove it.
All right, we're running out of time.
Okay,
One
thank
comment about the Finnish research: the highest peak was 102, 1.5 kilometers away. So that's relatively high, but that was the highest 10-minute out of half a year measurement. So not much
No.
in terms of the total time. All right. Okay.
Just a quick one. If you wonder if you're highly sensitive, roll down the window halfway in the back of your car. The kids do this. Driving 80 kilometers, you're going to get about 100 decibel, around 10, 11 hertz in a Nissan Leaf or in a Tesla X. I've done both. If you slow down to 50 kilometers an hour, it's going to go down to about 60, 70 decibels. Drive along for many hours and see if you're highly sensitive. That'll give you a pointer. So it's okay.